the previous one, a bit more philosophical. So it's got React in the title, okay? We'll eventually get there. But it's mostly about some of the stuff around React. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about was we want to have a little deep dive, well, actually not a little, quite a big deep dive into React. But we also wanted to see how it plays out with the rest of the sort of architecture ecosystem that we've been doing at Toyota as well. So, we want to talk about some background history about how we're managing this environment, some issues that we have as a result of that for the developers, and what we thought could help, and obviously that's a constant battle, where we ended up, and a few words about what we did with React and what we're going to do in the next 6 months or a year. So, first of all, a little bit of background. A couple of years ago, we decided to take on the website and move it away from an on-premise environment onto the Heroku platform, which, a bit like React, was a little bit of a gamble on our side because people were mostly using it for hobby systems. Maybe there's a little bit of there's a few startups using React Heroku, and in Europe it wasn't very popular. In fact, when we went live, they finally provided European data centers for us. So we were just, everything that they did was just about in time for us to adopt it. We moved from .NET and SQL onto Node.js and MongoDB, which was really good. Made the development on the server side a lot quicker after the initial learning curve for the developers. On the client side, we moved from randomstack.js to randallstack.js. There really is an incredible variety on the client side amongst the Toyota estate. Bart moved from this J thing, which was an absolute piece of crap, let's be honest, that some people did in-house. And it was a total nightmare because it was like jQuery, but without all the good stuff. So it had all of the kind of the bad stuff with jQuery, but it didn't have any ecosystems, so nothing integrated with it. So it was constant work. I don't know how this guy ever persuaded the web team to work with it, to be honest. But there we are. That was before my time, as they say. But we still found that we have lots of stacks because React was popular. Generally, and we made a bet on it. But I talked to the other developers on the website, because the car configurator is one service. Then you've got the website with the marketing information. You've got service bookings. You've got all the kind of various things that a large car company wants to offer you. And we found that Randall Stack, in fact, there was lots of Randall Stacks. Everyone had a stack. Every time we looked at a web component, someone had a different way of doing it. Some people were doing jQuery, some people were doing Backbone, some people were doing Backbone with their own memory management, some people were using Marionette, and every developer had their own flavor, their own versions of this thing. It was all over the place. Global everything, as Bart says, everything's in the global namespace. And to your point there, Davey, everything was getting loaded up. There certainly were plenty of times, Bart, I'm sure you remember, where things were clashing with each other, especially in the CSS side of things. We had a lot of issues with that around, release management, where one component would be released, they would have a CSS property, and that would then blow up another one. So there was a lot of human communication around that. There was also some problems with shared nothing. So we had shared everything on some places and shared nothing in other places, where things were constantly being reloaded, JavaScript libraries were being reloaded because it was a slightly different version, or because it was the same version, but one was getting it from the CDN, one was getting it from localhost, blah, 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 blah. We also had these concertina deployments where everybody's waiting for, and this was a real problem for the car configurator guys at the beginning of this, where all of the components were essentially glued onto the website and bound into the website and weren't able to deploy on their own. So when the website had a fix and the car configurator guys had a fix, they had a fix for this bug that was really annoying all the users, but they couldn't deploy it independently, so they had to go to the website guys, but we're not ready yet, we've got some things that have changed. And so there was a lot of these concertina-style problems. And we knew there were more services coming, and there are more services coming. And so this is essentially an agility problem. Yeah. If you're all kind of pinned on one group to deploy everything, then you're kind of screwed from the start. So we had to fix that. Oh yeah, I should have picked that. So we thought we had to do a few things. So first of all, we decided that some places, and I think there's an instinct certainly in Toyota as well to do this, is to say one framework rules them all. You know, we all go with React, we all go with Angular, we all go with Ember, we all go with whatever. And the problem with that in the JavaScript community is that they change every 6 months. This little diagram here is what's called, like, it's a non-stick bottle, so the ketchup always sticks, but they've got some nanotechnology to slide it out. And that's the sort of thing that happened to the JavaScript community. Every 6 months there's a brand new hotness, there's Ember, there's Angular 1. We've got it all wrong, fuck it, Angular 2, you know? We get it right this time, honest guys. We can have debates about that later. But we wanted to support this style of freedom, if you like, because we are aware that things change. And even if it's one component group find it difficult to get away from React or Ember or Backbone or whatever, then they should be free to do that, and they should be free to do it at the pace that they want to do it at. So we wanted to make things more modular. That was the first thing we wanted to do. So we introduced require.js to make sure that each of the components that are part of this website, even though they're from different modules, they're all being included and they're all being managed independently. Okay? So the only thing we had to do essentially in the website was put some menu items into place, hook up some menu items, and then pretty much everybody was independent at that point. The car config was a bit different. I think you have some special C names, you have a separate domain, but essentially it's glued in with some menu items and some links that essentially pop you out. You might not notice this as a user, of course. I hope you don't notice this, but it pops you out to a different website, and that's all handled. And then this is now a completely separate service. The other thing we wanted to do was automate, as George Bush might say, the deployments. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that we didn't have all this self-building stuff. We wanted to be able to. We're using Heroku. It's a nice environment. We can just do git push onto Heroku. That's all awesome. But being Toyota and having a release management system, we also wanted to say, okay, well, let's give some control over these releases. In order to do that, we don't just want to git push out to the environment. We want to have some control through a continuous integration environment, have some tests, if we had any. And then gradually we'll... Jest is quite new, by the way, so it's a bit... but anyway, yeah, so it would be nice to have these tests and then run all those things and push a button and say, okay, let's deploy them. And now we can do it. We can deploy our service booking thing, our car configurator thing, our website thing, and they're all completely independent. We're going to have more and more of these things, and they will also be independent things. And then we're using web components for hooking up these independent services. I was lying about web components, okay? Web components are the thing that may never exist, okay? I don't know how many people here kind of believe in web components yet, but you will hear from me so far that I'm quite keen on taking risks with things I believe in, and I did that for Heroku and I did that for React, but I couldn't do it for web components. Okay, for me, it's still a bit too far. There's not enough support in the browsers for web components. I'm certainly not prepared to bet the farm on Polymer. I don't know who is. Hands up, anyone? You're betting the farm on Polymer?
Yeah.
It must be a pretty fucking small farm, but you know.
That's the point. It's not big enough that it's really a risk.
Yeah, okay.
But it works. Yeah, had I done it earlier, I'd be fighting my hand off because like as they did with Angular, they changed it from 05 to 1. And so
yeah.
It's kind of a total rewrite. But for small farms, I think it works.
Yeah, I think for small farms it's okay, but for us it's like I was saying, I don't want to say, okay everybody, let's go the Polymer way. It just isn't cooked yet. I think, and it's one of these things where if you want to do web components, you've kind of got to do it en masse. You know, and that's the advantage of web components. Is that it's one thing you want to eventually do is actually use the standards and the browser to extend the domain. So you know, I get what they're trying to do, and it's really awesome. And there's some great demos. but for me, it's really not baked yet. The standard isn't ready, the browser support isn't there, so, I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm thinking maybe next year, maybe the year after, actually, it'll be ready to do this kind of stuff.
But, for example, Firefox backed out
Yeah.
part of the spec, and so they aren't doing now.
Yeah, there's definitely a war going on here at a sort of political level, which we want to avoid. And I'm a big fan, and the nice thing about the JavaScript community, I think the JavaScript community, we're here talking about React, but we know about other things as well. We know the thing about React is that it helps us to produce and write JavaScript, actually. And like you said, you can mix in pure JavaScript with React. It's fine, that's allowed. In fact, JavaScript, everything. That's really the thing about React, because who writes HTML anymore? You just put it all in React. So actually what's happening in my mind, there's a lot of things going on in the developer community that's trying to address the things that Web Component wants to do. So, and I'll come on to some of those things. So it doesn't entirely justify what we've done to hack around this space, but I think that it's still a bit of a dream, it's still a bit of a holy grail as far as I'm concerned. It's a bit distant. So what did we do? Okay, a little bit of a shame on us, that's for sure. What we did was we did something small, we did something a lot less ambitious. We wanted to get all these components together because it's necessary to, for instance, the car configurator, they want to link to finance options, the online service booking, people want to link to the customer portal where people can log in and look at their cars and then make their bookings. So we need to make all these things connect together. What we decided to do in the end was to use basically an event bus on the client. Now again, who needs an event bus? The reactive programming guys are all against this. But again, that's a kind of monolithic approach. Once you get one framework for everything, then it's okay. But I think if you haven't got one framework, then you have to use something external to that framework. And that's why I went with Postal.js. It's got this AMQP style events, which are very nice. You can segregate whoever doesn't know about AMQP, we can talk later, but it's basically, you can have named channels that are very nicely grouped, and you can use regular expressions on subscriptions and stuff like this. So it's very nice. And then the hack that we did was to have a small shared JSON file to specify the contract. And that's got things like published events, etc. And this is the only thing that looks a little bit like code, but it's basically a JSON file. So you can see here we've got things like, we've got a contract and it's got some metadata, and then it's got some CSS maps. I don't know if you can read that actually. I think it's probably okay. Then you've got things like published events and subscribed events. So each of the services that are registering with the main bus can register and say, okay, well, I'm subscribed to these events, and I'm going to publish this type of data, and I'm going to require these kind of attributes or properties in the map, and I'm going to publish those. So that's the only bit of code. So finally, we had something to do with React now, which is this single sign-on initiative. Clearly, if you're going to have a big website which has got lots of different things, you've got these customer portals, you've got the configurators, you've got the online service booking, you've got people trying to save their cars as part of this configurator. The bit we didn't quite get to, where they save their QR code and they get that emailed. Well, if you're going to do that, you have to kind of register and log in. So if you do that, and then you go to another part of the website, and it says, okay, well, log in again, please. Everyone hates that, of course, So, and that we definitely had that situation where everybody was doing their own user management, their own login, their own authentication, their own registration, reset passwords. It's a total horror show, really. So we wanted to do that to get everything together. And our goal with that was to be very client-centric, okay? And the reason for that was because security is one of these annoying things where if you kind of tell everybody, okay, I had this before, we call these REST services in this order with these parameters, and everything, and you get this token, and then you pass that token and this token. It's the kind of thing which is a pain in the ass, everyone hates it, and people aren't good at it, and it breaks, and so we wanted to isolate it to one component on the client side. Everyone else on the client side can basically raise an event to say, I want to log in, or I want to log out, or I want to register. And and then this component, this SSO component, which is essentially just a very small, it's the kind of like canonical microservice. All it does is manage your user. It pops up, it's a React component, and off it goes. You can fill in the forms. And this component itself is the only component that's responsible for talking to the back end, to log you in, to get the tokens, to write the local session information. And I did that in React because I figured, well, it's an opportunity to use this technology. It's as Bart says, it integrates very well with everything else. You can take it very incrementally. And it also, the other nice thing about it, just pop onto this, is that we can integrate it very easily. So in fact, for these sort of back-end calls, we use the Ajax stuff. Probably there's a new library now to make calls to the back end. I've heard of Redux, but yeah. But this was a little while ago. But it integrates very well. We made calls to MongoDB. We use these pub/sub events so that when we've logged in and when we've registered, we put these messages on the bus, and everyone's kind of then aware of these things. What was interesting though was that it's not so reactive. From a FRP perspective, from a sort of functional reactive programming perspective, if you compare that with models like Elm, or in the JavaScript world, things like bacon.js, then actually it's quite annoying the bacon.js guys have this really nice example. The hello world of bacon.js is a registration form. So I really wanted to do that, but I spent days trying to work it. I just couldn't get it to work. And no one in the community had a nice example. Maybe that's done now, so I'll hold my hands up if you've got a great example afterwards. I'd really like to see it. But it ended up being quite hacky to say, okay, someone's filled that field in, it's not quite right, and do all and all the kind of cross comparison rules end up being a bit annoying in my opinion. Compared to these other more FRP functional programming models. Where are we going next? First of all, we want to say that modularity is king. Everything has to become modules. We want to break that down more and more and more so we can have more frequent deployments. And one of the things that we want to try and do across the entire architecture, and I really recommend this, is to architect for replaceability. Okay, because everything is fucked, okay, and it's always going to be like that. Yeah, you're never going to fix anything, and everyone in California and everyone in Europe, since Davey and Max fixed us all up, and we all get teched. We're all going to be making things better, okay, and we're going to want to throw this stuff away. So we have to design for that. We have a lot of stuff in Toyota, which is on the mainframe, which is on the middleware layers, all these kind of nice fancy frameworks, but they're too big. Even the microservices, microservices. But designing microservices so that you've got less than 1,000 lines of code everywhere, and then who cares if you throw it away? Who cares if there's a new framework? Of course, you can't do it all at once. I get that. Nobody wants to do that. But it allows this kind of, if you've got everything modular and small and relatively straightforward to deal with and isolated, then you can evolve that in a kind of Brownian fashion almost. Okay? You can just take it. One or two modules, you can just, if everything is nice and stackless, of course we're all looking at Docker and stuff like that, this helps all this modularity. So modularity is king, that's for sure. And you should think about that, not just on the whole sort of stack side, but certainly on your client side. As Bart said, of course, when we look at ES6, that looks a no-brainer. So the other thing we're doing at the moment is we're reviewing the require.js stuff, because that turned out to be a bit of a pain in the neck to use require.js. So we're looking at this Teflon non-stick style. We'll change that. And we'll review that with various developers. But again, the nice thing about those tools is you can do it on a modular basis. So if somebody wants to use Grunt, someone wants to Go, someone wants to use Yeoman, okay, fine. I think we're going to look at something like Webpack or NPM. Again, NPM looks like it's a favorite because there's lots of people, even Google now, are saying they will actually deploy everything through NPM. So I know it's got a huge backing, so that looks an interesting option. the other thing that I was talking about earlier on with developer-led initiatives around web components is these CSS modules. These look really nice. Because that's, to me, it's the one remaining annoyance of the browser. Because obviously JSX gets rid of the HTML problem, everything's in there, it's all JavaScript, we're all happy. The virtual DOM solves all of our problems there. Not quite though, this CSS thing is still bubbling around everywhere, it's sort of annoying. So now we have this CSS module stuff, please.
Actually, I think Facebook has a bunch of libraries, so you don't have to use CSS in React either. You design your style properties somewhere else and just let it inline it all over the place.
No, there's some debate about whether we do I don't I like CSS modules because it's kind of something which is everywhere. You can do it. You can certainly do it with React. We can do it with React. We can do it with many other frameworks as well. And I like that part. And I don't have React's got its advantages, but I don't want to be bound into it for everything. And I think CSS, you can use these CSS modules in all kinds of things. And I think it's good to have a kind of approach to that. But yeah, you can use inline modules as well, that's for sure. The main point is you want to have some facility where they're no longer on a global namespace, that's for sure. So yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're going all in with React, then that's fine, and maybe dispense with this option, that's for sure. But the main point I'm trying to make is that we need to have this real security around the namespaces for CSS that the shadow DOM will give us, with web components, but we're not going to get that. Sorry?
Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, one of those fine days, But we can do that now. That's a really nice thing about these things. So I'd like to do that. And then, is Teflon a standard? I mean, are we going to... I listened to a podcast on the way here, actually, about fatigue in the JavaScript community. I don't know if you listen, there's a podcast called JavaScript Jabba, which is really very good. There's a lot of great guests on there. And these guys were talking about, the fatigue, everyone's sick, it's this framework one week, it's that framework the other week. Yeah, but it's exciting, I'm tired. So it's definitely happening, And also, to some extent, as I introduced at the beginning, React and Redux look so attractive. You compare them to these other things, and you wonder whether these other things will actually be blown away by them. I don't know. I think there's still a lot of diehards in these communities. A lot of people still believing in Backbone. Someone's still believing in Angular. Not me, but someone's believing in Meteor as well. There's a few diehards there. So, and that's still, I mean, in many ways, that's got such a great developer experience. But again, it's like size and scale. But I think if we want to go forward anyway, for me, if I confess, I'm more of a closure script guy. I'm more of a kind of list functional closure person. So I would like to go with the one in green. But I also see people looking at pure script because that integrates very well with other JavaScript libraries. And of course Elm, as some people here are very big fans of. And this is we're never going to change, never going to stop. That's my point. Yeah, we are going to be a non-stick environment. So I think React is great. And we've used it, and we're going to use it. And I think we're going to, as a sort of default for us at least, React looks very promising for now, and for another year or two going forward. But we always have to have our eyes open. We always have to understand what the community is doing, not just the JavaScript community, but the computing community and web community in general. Okay. So, I don't know if you want to come up again, but we've got time for a few more questions. I know I'm fighting the pizzas here, but if you want to ask us anything, that would be great.
Do you have any change in your customers? Because moving from .NET SQL to Node.js is not exactly the same kind of customers.
It's the same developers, if that's what you mean. I mean, the customers are just car customers, so I'm a bit. Do you mean?
I mean, selling .NET and selling Node.js someone else, except developers, because it's not monopolistic, but it's different when it comes to selling a product or development to
Okay. So I'm in this enterprise architecture group, and we have to go out and persuade people that this technology is interesting, or at least it's viable. Actually, to be perfectly honest, what we really have to do is we have to tell people that this is viable in Toyota. And I think that's what enterprises need to do. They need to tell their developers that this stuff is viable in their organization. And that's because developers are interested in this stuff. We've got a lot of people here tonight, you know, and that's great stuff. But in many communities, many environments, it's just not feasible or possible to do that kind of work. So when we went out and we said to the business, you know, we want to go onto the cloud platform for everything, they said, okay, awesome, no problem. As far as they're concerned, it's all good. We had some pushback in terms of security and network management and all that kind of stuff. Websites are a bit of a special case because it's public data, so of course it's a bit of an easier sell to say we'll put this kind of stuff on the cloud as an experiment. As it happens, actually, that platform is quite mission critical these days. You know, if your website blows up, and it did unfortunately a couple of times. The first day we went live with Heroku, they recycled our machinery. But anyway, the funny thing is that the CEO of Heroku was in our offices the next day, accidentally, you know, getting a complete grilling. But generally it's worked out very well, and you know, that change has worked out very well. So we build up the trust. You go to developers in the JavaScript world and you say, okay, actually, you know, we've done some experiments, we've got some big systems out there, like this car configurator in React. If you're interested in trying it, it's completely doable. We've got all the continuous integration platforms. There are test systems now to be able to do this, so we can get all the best practices back again as well. I don't know if that answers your question actually, but I just spoke a while. Yeah.
And more about you were talking about what's next, and you mentioned ES6. And is it a requirement because in general modularity or?
Well, actually, ES6 is going to get one of these like soft cells. Yeah, if you want to do ES6, then do it. Okay. I don't want to say in my role, I don't want to say you must do ES6, and the reason for that actually is just because the actual compliance on the node side is fairly weak. It's about 70%. On the browser side, it's terrible. Obviously, everyone's using Babel to make that happen. And there's a lot of countermeasures and the source maps and so I think if you're a really confident and competent developer, then I think ES6 gives you a lot of power. And if you're happy to take the risk with the tool chain and all the debug issues that you might get, then I think it's a win. But I think you have to be. There's still some risks around ES6 in my opinion.
How about static typing versus dynamic?
Well, yeah. I'm a fan of dynamic typing, but you know, I don't mean as far as I know, the classes are just sugar around prototypes, so I don't think it actually changes very much.
Because talking about the JavaScript fatigue, this thing around TypeScript versus ES6.
Okay. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, okay. So different, like compiled to JavaScript languages, like PureScript and Elm, yeah, those kind of things. So there was some. I was saying that I was explaining to Bart actually that Elm actually fully supports semantic versioning. And that's quite interesting, quite amazing how it does that through its type system. You know, you can really be confident when you well, in fact, it will bump the version for you. It will tell you whether this version is a patch, a feature, or a major version. It can tell you that from the type system, and that's quite powerful. Problem is, you've got to get 6 degrees in mathematics to understand higher kind of dependent types. You know, so
it's not Haskell.
Well, you know, but PureScript and Elm, they're both kind of Haskell inspired, and I personally, I've got to be honest, I'm not great at that kind of stuff. I've done a lot of object-oriented programming and type-based programming, so I get it, but those kind of things are more difficult for me, so I can't stand here and say, yeah, wow, they're totally awesome, I get it. And I think it's a big culture clash for JavaScript developers as well, to move from that. There's certainly benefits in terms of correctness. That is, that's a huge win. But I think there's also a big learning curve. It would be a bigger shift to go there than to go to like the ES6 way, which is ES6 brings a lot of safety to the language in terms of const and stuff like this, and if you use ES6, then you get rid of all this use strict stuff. The subset of language is much safer, and I think that's going to be a good thing for the JavaScript community.
So when you switch from ES5 to ES6 as a developer, really you begin to enjoy again JavaScript, that's all. And you don't have to learn the whole ES6 stuff, you just go little by little. And there is no fatigue that you're speaking of with from ES5, from ES6, it's the opposite. You suddenly, cool, like when it's React.
It's very incremental. That's really a nice thing about it as well.
The fatigue is also coming from the tools you're putting in place to have all the functionalities from ES6. When you are trying to use Webpack with hot module replacement, with server-side rendering, with CSS module, with X and X and X, then you start really getting tired because there is nobody that has exactly the same configuration as you do for your project.
But I think if you're doing that, then I think you have to you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're consuming the bleeding edge. And that's okay, But don't pretend that people owe you anything for that.
No, of course not.
If you're going on the leading edge, then you're taking those risks. And you have to be grown up about that. We're all men.
Yeah, but that's...
We should take grown up decisions. And I think those people who are complaining about change are idiots, because things are going to change. Get over it, move on. And if we take the really bleeding edge change, it's going to be hard work. Things are going to fuck up, for sure. Even if we're 6 months or a year behind, we're a bit better off because we've got some Google juice at that point. Someone's found out what's broken, and maybe the fix still works. I don't know. But you're right. I think incremental adoption of a lot of this technology is the way to go. If you're at the bleeding edge, it does hurt. It can get tiring, but you're there for a reason, I guess. For your own personal satisfaction or some business imperative that's making you adopt certain technologies pretty hard. And that's going to be a bit of an uncomfortable position, I think, for sure, if you're really pushing on.
As the project is very long, and you said about 18 months, right?
Yes.
You were doing track of if there was let's say, a moment that you said, okay, that was a bad decision, or what exactly was the toughest challenge that you faced with React?
Probably Bart can answer that better than me. To be honest, I've never felt that, and we've had quite a few groups look at React and actually adopt it. I think Bart has got the biggest code base, so that's counts. But he's also got the oldest one, so that probably puts him in a position of being able to have a bit more authority to speak about it. Can you ask the question again, please?
If there was a point that you said, okay,
Did you ever feel, oh shit?
Yeah, such a hard challenge, such a tough challenge with React that was related with React, you said, okay, maybe it was not a good, the best decision. If you reached this point, if you didn't?
The only thing which I was missing when I looked at React, which was really at the beginning, React went public, was animations. But now they are trying to fit it in through several ways. But besides that, I found that React was definitely a big step up as compared to what was available at that time of being. Because if you come from Flash, which I do, everything is really good, very much contained, and classes are really good defined, even though it can get critical, but yeah, JavaScript, everything can get critical too. But React was a really good way to start.
In the beginning of your talk, you mentioned that you had to build something for the iPad, so you had to get rid of Flash. Is that something that you would now use React Native for?
Well, the point was that it had to run in the browser. So I would definitely, the current config build in React can also run on the iPad browser, but there is no such thing as a an iPad application being the car config. So I would say no, but perhaps if the business allows it or wants it, then we make it happen. But if the web car config can be used in the iPad using a web view or whatever, which is already being done right now, by the way, well, if they're happy, we're happy.
I think the other interesting thing about that is that we have some other stuff in the dealerships with TVs where people can use the Apple TV, or actually they use an Android box, and Rod's company also developed something like that. What was quite interesting was it's Chrome OS, and you can, from the iPad, you can essentially have a little app and it projects keystrokes over the Chrome OS to a TV. So you don't have to write all the native components for all of these platforms if you have some tricks. You can use the same code base everywhere. It's all very responsive, and then as the car dealer is clicking on these things, those touches and those keystrokes and those drags are sent across to the Chrome OS and then rendered on the TV. That's really interesting. And honestly, React Native is interesting, but I think for this kind of thing, it wouldn't have the reach that the standard browser has. And we wouldn't have those kind of facilities so quickly. Sorry.
My question is about what made you move from this combination .NET SQL to Node.js and mobile?
Because cool, dude.
Other than that.
God.
Other than
Are you my dad? Huh? But no, seriously. The biggest problem with the thing that we really wanted to get, I mean, the SQL and the Mongo stuff was a bit of an artifact of JSON, because in the end, you're wasting a lot of. I also had XML in the past, so we had XML parsing, and so we wanted to get rid of that. We moved to JSON, and then if you're persisting JSON, you can put it in a relational database, of course you can, but actually it's why? We're not going to. It was mostly content. So putting that content into a relational database was just chopping it up for no reason. So we had a fresh start. We can do it that way instead. So that was really just productivity and simplicity. The Node.js bit from .NET to Node.js, the biggest problem that solved for us was deployability. When we were doing .NET, it was DLL hell. We couldn't. It was like taking days to deploy stuff. And the version management of all these DLLs and all these dependent things was horrible. It was horrible. Now, NPM's got its own issues, and if we've been on this journey for about a couple of years now, and NPM has definitely had some bumps in the road where they've changed their interpretation of what certain metadata things like tilde.
The same version.
What it started meaning. Okay, fine. So we've had a few blow-ups in that sense, but the main point was that we could just put the JavaScript. We do a git push onto Heroku, and bam, we were up. That was it. From a development joy perspective, it was just superb. Doing the same kind of thing in .NET. .NET and C# have a lot of power. All this link stuff and this async await that we're waiting for asynchronously. It had all that in C#, and of course with a few developers saying, we've got all that stuff. Certainly from an expressivity perspective, C# is very powerful, and I'm not going to deny that. But from a generic perspective of how quickly can you deploy this technology, how quickly can you get things up and running and tested, then Node just literally kills it.
We're talking about different developers, I guess.
Same developers.
Same developers.
Same developers.
So how long did it take to get up to speed?
Took, in terms of deploying stuff, about 6 weeks, which is pretty good. I mean, it took them about a year to get fully productive and get used to the libraries and stuff like that. But they already knew JavaScript because they're web people, so they'd already pushed a bit of JavaScript on the front end. So a lot of people had a bit of experience. They weren't pure C# guys. But there was definitely, some. I was expecting much more resistance, to be honest, because I know that they were keen on the language and they were keen on Microsoft in general, and this was a big shift. So I was expecting more resistance, and this was a different company from Bart's company, it was another agency. But actually, they were very happy to do it, and they were up for the challenge. So we won. You know, it was really good. And I don't be scared about asking people to do this kind of stuff. You know, people can change.
How big was the team?
The team started off as about 6 people, grew to about 20 people. So it was a very big team. It was a complete rewrite. It took about a year. Huge amounts of code. And we had the Heroku Node.js guy at the end after about a year's worth of code, and there were some issues, you know. Give us a few tips on testing frameworks, and I don't know why you're going to be the testing man in an hour, but you know, a few tips on the way that we do. These guys had used async, and he was saying, "Oh, the async stuff better." Okay. Small things like that. There was a few bits and pieces that we could pull apart. We could make it more modular. We could do better stuff. I mean, we've learned a lot in that period, and those guys have definitely learned a lot. But yeah, it was a huge code base, and it was a big rewrite, so it wasn't a trivial thing. We didn't do something small. It was a proper hard job. They got stuck into it, and they pulled it through.
We didn't talk about microservice. You tell about that during the introduction. Is it?
Yeah, the microservices, this single sign-on thing was a kind of microservice approach, and we have the UI stuff with React. We have a Node.js middleware there with some, actually it doesn't have a database, it talks to an authentication service, so the back end is an authentication service. I don't want to go into it too much because, I mean, I should have just talked about, I mentioned the architecture principle, and that was kind of enough. I can't show the whole thing because security is one of these privileged things, and if we go into exactly how all the tokens work, then people might be upset. But we're super keen on microarchitectures going forward, and we're getting quite a lot of buy-in from various development teams. But like I say, we can't force people to do things. We want to have people accept that. We want to have people to be motivated to do it. Generally, everyone's happy to have a go at that kind of thing. There are still some concerns about orchestration of these microservices, and we're using Heroku and Docker's on the rise, and how do we then, how does our data center look post Docker? That's still got to be resolved, to be honest. We're still thinking around some of those things, because if Heroku starts to adopt Docker as a container, if they can take Docker images rather than just Git pushes, and they've said they're interested in looking at that, then that becomes pretty easy for us. And their system is very close to Docker. You can actually develop in Docker and then do a Git push out so it's still using Linux containers. So our environments aren't too terribly different.
You want a cloud? For the production, you want on some kind of cloud? Or?
We're on Heroku, yeah.
For the production?
For the production, yeah.
So you're really close to specialization.
Yeah. So we've been looking at containers for a while, but obviously that's a hugely evolving space as well. With all the kind of swarm stuff and compose stuff with Docker and Kubernetes stuff, and yeah, so that's a big subject. We should look at the Kubernetes meetup or something. Okay, thanks very much. I think there's some pizza and really appreciate it.